The sky of Arathis IV burned red that day. Smoke and fire rolled across the shattered battlefield, turning the alien horizon into a storm of chaos. Human and Tyrell soldiers fought side by side, trying to survive the endless waves of machines that wanted to erase them both. Among those soldiers was Sergeant Luke Carter, a simple man from Earth known for his courage and his quiet way of leading others. He wasn't born a hero, he just never walked away when someone needed help. Luke's armor was cracked, his left arm bruised, and his oxygen low. But he didn't care. He was part of the rescue team assigned to find survivors from a downed royal shuttle. They said the shuttle carried someone important, someone from the Tyrell royal family. Most believed it was already too late. Enemy drones surrounded the crash zone and the air itself shimmered with deadly plasma storms. But Luke refused to stand by. "Sir, the winds are too unstable." His partner shouted over the comm. "Doesn't matter," Luke replied, tightening his grip on his rifle. Someone out there might still be alive. He pushed forward into the smoke. The world turned into sound and heat. The metallic scent of burning fuel filled his lungs. The deeper he went, the more he could feel the vibrations of explosions under his boots. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from purpose. When he finally reached the crash site, the shuttle lay split open like a broken shell. The metal still glowed with heat. The ground around it burned black. Luke called out, scanning with his helmet sensor. There, a weak life signal. Faint, almost gone, he ran toward it. Inside the shattered cabin, tangled in metal and smoke, lay Princess Alira of Tyrell. Her long silver-white hair was coated with ash, her delicate armor cracked. Even in pain there was something radiant about her, like moonlight trapped in the storm. Her breathing was shallow, and one of her wings, those soft glowing extensions of Tyrell royalty, was torn. Luke knelt beside her. "Hey, you're gonna be all right," he whispered. He didn't know if she understood him, but her violet eyes flickered open for a moment. She looked at him, confused, weak, and whispered something in her own language. Then the wreck groaned. The hull began to collapse. Luke didn't think, he just moved. He pulled her free, tearing his gloves and cutting his arms on jagged metal. The explosions grew louder. The enemy had seen the smoke and were closing in. He slung her over his shoulder and ran through the fire. The heat scorched his armor. His body screamed in pain, but he kept running. Plasma bolts hissed past him. He could hear the angry whine of enemy drones locking onto his position. "Carter, get out of there!" The radio crackled. "Not without her," he shouted back. He dove behind a rock as explosions tore through the ground. Holding the princess close, he shielded her body with his own. He could feel her faint pulse against his chest. He whispered, half to her and half to himself, "Just hang on a little longer." Finally, through the smoke, he saw the evac shuttle descending, a beam of light piercing the chaos. He pushed himself up and ran for it. Every step felt heavier, every breath sharper, but he didn't stop. He reached the ramp just as the ground behind him erupted. He threw himself inside, clutching the princess tight. The door sealed and the ship lifted off. Only then did Luke collapse, his vision fading. The last thing he saw before blacking out was her face. Peaceful now, breathing steadily. The image of that moment would later spread across both worlds. A human soldier, burned and bleeding, carrying the alien princess out of the fire. To the people of Earth, he became a symbol of courage. To the Tyrell, he became something far greater. But Luke Carter didn't think about fame or honor. All he knew was that he couldn't let someone die when he had the power to save them. He didn't know that this single act of bravery would soon bind his fate to hers forever. When Luke Carter opened his eyes again, everything was quiet. The smell of burned metal and smoke was gone. Instead, he felt cool air, clean and sweet. He blinked and saw a ceiling of shining silver light above him. His body ached, wrapped in strange glowing bandages that hummed softly. He was no longer on the battlefield. As his eyes adjusted, he realized he was lying in an alien medical chamber. The walls pulsed with soft blue light, and strange floating machines moved around him, scanning and healing. His armor was gone. His body felt lighter, almost too light. Then a gentle voice spoke beside him. "You are awake, human." Luke turned his head slowly. Standing next to his bed was Princess Alira. She looked far stronger than before, dressed in white royal robes that shimmered like moonlight. Her silver hair fell over her shoulders and her violet eyes glowed with warmth. Luke tried to sit up. "You're alive," he said weakly, a small smile forming. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. "Because of you." He didn't know what to say. "It was my job," he muttered, but his voice trembled a little. She tilted her head softly. "You risked everything. Even your life. That is not just duty." Before he could reply, the door to the chamber opened and 2 armored guards entered. Their armor was ornate, marked with royal symbols. Without a word, they bowed to the princess and then looked at Luke. "The king requests your presence," one of them announced in a deep voice. Luke frowned, confused. "The king?" Princess Alira nodded slowly. "My father. He has been waiting to speak with you." The walk to the throne room felt unreal. Luke followed the guards through golden halls filled with strange symbols and glowing windows that looked out into the endless stars. Everywhere he looked, alien faces turned toward him, some curious, others cold. He could feel the weight of their eyes. To them, he was an outsider, a human covered in scars and blood, standing inside a royal palace. When they reached the great doors of the throne chamber, they opened with a low hum. Inside, the space was vast and beautiful. A high crystal dome stretched above, and at the far end sat King Thalrian, ruler of the Terrell Dominion. His presence filled the room, tall, regal, with golden markings running down his face and eyes that shone like fire trapped in ice. Luke bowed instinctively. "Your Majesty." The king rose slowly. His voice echoed deep and powerful. "Sergeant Luke Carter of Earth, you saved my daughter's life when even my own guards failed her." Luke stayed silent, unsure what to say. The king stepped down from his throne and came closer. "You entered a storm that devoured armies. You carried her through death itself." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" Luke hesitated, then spoke softly. "Because no one else was going. Because I couldn't just leave her there." The king studied him for a long moment. The air felt heavy, like the entire room was holding its breath. Finally, the king nodded once. "Our laws are clear," he said. "A life saved binds 2 souls. When a Terrell royal is rescued from certain death, the rescuer and the saved are joined. It is a sacred bond." Luke blinked, confused. "Joined? What do you mean?" Princess Alira lowered her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "He means that marriage." Luke froze. "Marriage?" he repeated, his voice almost breaking. "Wait, Your Majesty, I didn't save her for that. The king raised his hand. "You have done more than any warrior of my people. You faced death for my child. You are now bound to her by our law, by our honor." Luke's heart raced. He looked at Alira. She was blushing softly, her glow dimmer than before. She looked as nervous as he felt. "Your Majesty," Luke said carefully, "I'm just a soldier. I don't belong in a palace. I don't belong here at all." But the king's expression softened. "Perhaps not. But sometimes fate chooses for us, human." He turned to his daughter. "Alira, you owe this man your life. What do you say?" She looked up, her voice trembling but clear. "I say, I will honor the bond." The room went silent. Every Terrell noble around them stared. Luke took a deep breath, his mind spinning. He had come to save a life, not change his own. Yet now, standing before the king and his daughter, he realized that what he had done on that battlefield had started something much greater than any rescue mission, something that would change the fate of 2 worlds. The news spread faster than light. Across both human and Terrell worlds, headlines flashed with the same story. Human soldier to marry alien princess. It was all anyone talked about. Some called it a miracle of peace, others called it a mistake. But for Luke Carter, it felt like a storm he didn't ask for. He sat on the balcony of the royal guest wing, staring out at the alien skyline. The city floated on crystal platforms, glowing softly under twin moons. The air was filled with music from distant towers, and rivers of light flowed between the buildings. It was beautiful, and yet Luke felt lost. He wasn't used to this life of comfort and ceremony. He was a soldier, a man of dirt, smoke, and hard duty. Now guards bowed to him, servants brought him food, and every alien he passed whispered his name. Some looked at him with respect, others with hatred. He sighed deeply. "I didn't save her for this," he muttered to himself. Behind him a soft voice answered, "I know." Luke turned to see Princess Alira standing by the doorway. She wore a simple silver dress this time, not the heavy royal robes. Her hair shimmered faintly in the moonlight, and her violet eyes looked tired, almost sad. Luke stood awkwardly. "Your Highness," she smiled faintly. "Please call me Alira. You saved my life. You don't have to bow to me." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, Alira." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars. The soft hum of the city surrounded them like a quiet song. Alira finally spoke. "My father's decision surprised even me. I did not expect to this bond. But in our laws, life saved means life shared." Luke looked down, his voice quiet. "On Earth, we don't have laws like that. We save people because it's the right thing to do, not because we want something back." She turned her eyes toward him. "Do you regret it?" Luke paused. He wanted to say no immediately, but something caught in his chest. "I don't regret saving you," he said softly. "I'd do it again, even if it killed me. But this marriage, I don't know what to do with it. I don't belong in your world." Alira looked at him carefully. "You think you are unworthy?" He gave a tired smile. "I think I'm just human. That's all." She stepped closer, her glow lighting the balcony floor. "Then maybe being human is what makes you worthy." Her words hit him harder than she could know. He had faced armies and monsters, but this made his heart race in a way battle never did. For the next few days they began to talk more. She would visit him in the garden, bringing strange fruits that glowed like stars. He would tell her stories of Earth, how rain felt against his skin, how oceans smelled like salt and wind, how coffee helped humans survive mornings. In return, she told him about Tyrell, how their people were born from the light of dying stars, how they believed in soul energy, a bond that connected life beyond blood. Each time they talked, Luke began to see her not as a princess but as a person, a kind, curious, and lonely one. But peace never comes easy. Rumors began to spread through the palace. Some Tyrell nobles called Luke an invader in royal clothing. They said a human should never stand beside their princess. Others believed the union was the key to true peace. When Luke passed through the halls, he could feel the tension. Eyes followed him everywhere. Guards whispered. Nobles sneered. One evening, as he walked through the palace courtyard, he heard two officials talking. "This human will destroy our pride," one said bitterly. "The king may bless the bond, but many will not," said the other. Luke kept walking, pretending not to hear, but their words burned in his heart. That night he stood at his window again, staring out into the dark sky. He could see Alira's chamber light glowing faintly across the courtyard. He whispered softly to himself, "I don't know how this story ends, but I'll protect her, no matter what it costs." At that very moment, Alira stood by her own window, looking toward his. She could feel his thoughts even from afar. The same quiet determination, the same lonely fire. Two hearts from different worlds. Connected not by duty anymore, but by something deeper. Something neither of them could yet name. Days turned into weeks, but peace did not follow. Inside the shining palace of Tyrell, shadows began to move. Many nobles whispered in secret chambers, anger growing like a silent storm. To them, the idea of a human marrying their princess was an insult, a stain on royal honor. They called Luke a beast in armor, a creature of dirt and blood. But outside those halls, the people were divided. Some saw Luke as a symbol of hope, proof that love and bravery could unite galaxies. Others saw him as a threat to tradition, The streets echoed with voices, some cheering his name, others calling for his exile. Luke felt the tension every day. Guards no longer smiled when they saw him. Some servants avoided his eyes. Still, he stayed calm, hiding his unease behind quiet strength. One evening, as he walked through the palace garden, he found Princess Alira sitting beside a pool of glowing water. Her reflection shimmered on the surface, her silver hair shining like liquid light. "You should be resting," Luke said softly, stepping closer. She smiled faintly. "And you should be learning how to smile." He chuckled a little. "I forgot how." Her eyes softened. "You carry too much worry, Luke. You cannot stop every heart from hating you." "I don't care if they hate me," he said quietly, sitting beside her. "But I can't stand the thought that they might hurt you because of me." Her expression darkened slightly. "There are old powers in this palace. Men who still believe Tyrell blood must never mix with human. They speak of tradition, but all they seek is control." Before Luke could reply, the sound of a soft explosion echoed through the distant corridors. The ground trembled beneath them. The garden lights flickered. Alira's eyes widened. "That came from the east wing." Luke stood instantly, hand on his weapon. "Stay behind me." They ran toward the smoke, guards rushing in the same direction. The corridors were filled with shouts, panic, confusion, and the sharp crack of plasma fire. Luke's instincts took over. He pushed through the smoke, clearing corners like he was back on the battlefield. Then he saw them, masked figures moving fast, their armor painted black with red marks of rebellion. Assassins. One of them aimed a plasma blade at Alira. Luke didn't think. He threw himself forward, knocking her down and drawing his sidearm in one motion. A blast of blue light hit the wall above them, scorching the air. "Protect the princess," he shouted, pulling her behind a fallen pillar. The assassins attacked again, moving like shadows. Luke fought with every ounce of his strength. He blocked one strike with his forearm guard, spun and slammed his elbow into the attacker's chest. Another came from behind. Luke grabbed his arm, twisted, and threw him into the wall, but they kept coming. There were too many. One blade cut across Luke's side, tearing through his armor. He winced but didn't fall. His blood stained the marble floor, dark against the glowing tiles. Then he heard Alira's scream. A third assassin was running straight at her. "No!" Luke roared, pushing through the pain. He jumped in front of her just as the blade came down. The strike hit him deep across his ribs. He gasped, but his arm shot out, catching the assassin's wrist. With a burst of strength, he disarmed him and struck him down with his own weapon. Silence fell. The last attacker fell to the floor, motionless. Alira crawled toward Luke, her eyes filled with tears. His armor was smoking, blood seeping from his side. "Luke, you're hurt again," she whispered, voice trembling. He smiled weakly, trying to stay upright. "I told you. It's becoming a bad habit." She pressed her glowing hands against his wound, energy flowing from her palms. "Why do you always risk your life for me?" she asked softly. He looked into her eyes, his breathing slow. "Because it's worth it." Her tears fell onto his face, glowing softly as they touched his skin. "And I'm tired of watching you bleed for me." Guards finally arrived, surrounding them. The king himself appeared moments later, his eyes filled with fury and fear. Luke, still on his knees, saluted weakly. "Your Majesty." They wanted her dead. Someone inside your palace helped them. The king clenched his fists. "Then they will pay." He looked at Luke, at the human who had once again stood between death and his daughter. For the first time, there was no doubt in his eyes, only respect. Alira held Luke's hand tightly, refusing to let go. In that burning moment, surrounded by smoke and ruin, their bond deepened, not because of law or duty, but because both hearts had faced death together and survived. When Luke Carter opened his eyes, everything was white. The soft hum of healing machines filled the quiet chamber. His body felt heavy, but the pain was gone. He blinked slowly, trying to remember what happened. Then it came back. The explosion, the assassins, the sound of Alira screaming his name. He turned his head slightly and froze. There she was, Princess Alira sitting beside him, her hand wrapped around his. Her eyes were red from crying, her silver hair slightly tangled. She had not slept. When she saw him awake, she let out a shaky breath. "You finally decided to wake up," she whispered, voice trembling. Luke gave a weak smile. "You didn't have to stay here all night." Her fingers tightened around his. "Where else would I go? You almost died." Again, he looked into her eyes, soft and full of pain. "I've been through worse," he said, trying to lighten the mood. But Alira didn't smile. "You bleed for me every time, Luke. You fight like your life means nothing." "Why?" Her voice broke at the end. He stared at the ceiling for a long moment before answering quietly. "Because my life has always been about protecting others. It's what I know. And if I have to bleed to keep you safe, then so be it." Tears welled in her eyes. She looked down, whispering, "And if I lose you, then who will protect me?" He turned his head toward her. "You don't need protection, Alira. You're stronger than you think." For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the soft hum of machines remained. Then Alira leaned closer, her hand trembling as she touched his face. "Humans are strange," she said softly. "You risk everything for someone who owes you nothing." Luke smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what makes us human." Her lips curved into a sad smile. "Maybe that's what makes you special." She stayed beside him every day after that. When he couldn't walk, she helped him stand. When the pain grew worse, she sang softly in her language, an ancient melody that calmed his heart. Even the guards outside the room felt the peace in her song. During those long nights, they talked about everything. Luke told her about his childhood on Earth, the rain that smelled of soil, the laughter of children, the feeling of wind on his face. Alira listened with wonder. "My people live in glass cities," she said one evening. "We do not feel rain. We only watch it through shields. Your world sounds alive." Luke smiled gently. "Maybe one day you'll see it yourself." She looked down, whispering, "Only if you're there to show me." Something inside Luke's chest stirred at those words. For the first time, the bond between them no longer felt like duty. It felt like destiny. But outside their small world of peace, a palace still burned with unrest. The failed assassination had not silenced the nobles, it had enraged them. They called Luke a curse, saying his presence brought chaos. Still, the king's command protected him. No one could harm him openly. Yet Luke could feel the tension in every corner. One night, unable to sleep, he walked to the balcony, his wounds still bandaged. The twin moons of Tyrell hung over the sky, bathing the palace in soft light. He didn't notice Alira had followed him until she spoke. "You shouldn't be standing," he turned, smiling. "Couldn't sleep." She stepped closer, her long robe brushing the floor. "You think too much," she said gently. "About duty, about honor, about everything except yourself." He laughed softly. "Maybe I'm just not good at being royal." Alira's glow brightened faintly. "You are better than royal. You are real." She reached up, placing her palm on his cheek. Her touch was warm, her glow surrounding them both like a small sunrise. Luke's breath caught. "Alira!" Her voice was a whisper. "When you saved me, I thought it was only fate. But now I know it was more. I feel it every time I look at you." Their foreheads touched, her people's sign of affection. A faint light bloomed where their skin met. A soft pulse that joined their hearts for a single timeless moment. Luke felt peace, real and deep, for the first time in years. "I don't know what happens next," he murmured, "but whatever it is, I'll stand by you." She smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Then we'll stand together." From that night onward, the whispers of hatred outside the palace began to fade from Luke's thoughts. Because for him, in that quiet moment under two moons, nothing else mattered. He had found something worth fighting for, not a cause, not a duty, but a heart. Peace never stays long when pride stands in its way. After the attack, the palace recovered slowly, but the tension around Luke Carter only grew. Whispers turned into protests. Some nobles refused to accept a human as part of the royal family. Others claimed the king's blessing had weakened their traditions. Soon, a group of high-ranking Tyrell lords gathered before the throne, their voices filled with fire. "This human does not understand our ways," one shouted. "He cannot share royal blood," another cried. "Let him prove his worth," said the oldest among them, and that single sentence changed everything. The king's expression was grave. "You speak of the trial of honor," he said. "It is the only way," the nobles answered. "If he truly deserves our princess, let him prove it before the eyes of the people." The king looked down from his throne at Luke, who stood tall despite the murmurs and glares around him. "This is not what I wanted for you, human," the king said softly. "But our laws demand balance. Will you accept this trial?" Luke didn't hesitate. "If it proves that my heart is true," he said, "then I'll face whatever comes." Alira's eyes widened. "No, father, this isn't fair. He's still healing." Luke turned to her, giving a faint smile. "It's okay, Alira. I've faced worse." But deep down she could see the pain behind his calm voice. He wasn't just fighting for honor, he was fighting for his place by her side. The trial of honor was set in the great arena of Trell, a massive coliseum made of shining white stone that floated above the capital city. On the day of the trial, thousands filled the seats. The sky shimmered with banners of gold and silver. Even the human ambassadors from Earth had come to witness the event. Luke stood in the center of the arena, dressed not in royal armor, but in his old human combat gear. It was scratched, scarred, and burned from 100 battles, but it was his. The king's voice echoed through the air. "Sergeant Luke Carter of Earth, you have 3 trials to complete: endurance, courage, and truth. Pass them, and you shall be one of us." The first test began with the trial of endurance. Luke was made to walk across the desert of Thal, an artificial wasteland filled with burning winds and shifting sandstorms. No technology, no help, only his will. For hours he pushed forward, his body aching, heat burning his skin. The alien sun glared down mercilessly, but he didn't stop. At the edge of collapse, Luke looked up and whispered to himself, "You didn't quit before. Don't quit now." He took one last step and crossed the finish line. The crowd watched in silence. Even the nobles who hated him couldn't hide their surprise. Next came the trial of courage. He faced a Tyrell warrior champion, 7 feet tall, armed with twin plasma blades. The fight was not meant to kill, but to test spirit. When the signal sounded, the champion attacked fast, his blades flashing like lightning. Luke barely dodged, rolling across the sand. His breath came hard and fast, his side still sore from old wounds. "Yield, human," the warrior roared. Luke spat blood, gripping his knife. "Humans don't quit," he said through clenched teeth. He charged again. The fight was fierce. Metal clashed against plasma, strength against speed. The crowd gasped as Luke caught one of the champion's blades between his armor plates and, with a twist, disarmed him. He pressed his knife to the champion's chest but didn't strike. The king stood. "Enough!" The arena fell silent. Luke lowered his weapon and stepped back, chest heaving. The champion stared at him for a moment, then bowed. "Honor to you, human." Cheers erupted from the stands. Finally came the trial of truth. Before the entire court, Luke was asked a single question by the king himself. "Luke Carter of Earth, why do you wish to marry my daughter?" The arena grew still. Everyone leaned in. Luke looked at Alira. Her violet eyes met his, trembling. He took a deep breath. "I didn't come here to be a prince," he said softly. "I didn't save her for a reward. I did it because I couldn't walk away from someone in danger. But over time, she became more than someone I saved. She became the reason I keep fighting. I don't want her crown. I just want her smile. That's all I need." The silence broke with applause, slow at first, then louder and louder until the entire arena shook with it. Even the king's stern face softened. "Then you have passed the trial, human," he said proudly. "Not because of your strength, but because of your heart." Alira ran to him, tears of joy glimmering in her eyes. I told them you would never give up. Luke smiled, exhausted but alive. Guess I'm starting to believe that myself. And in that moment, surrounded by two worlds, Luke Carter, human soldier, savior, and now a symbol of unity, stood not as an outsider, but as one of them. The sons of Tyrell rose higher than ever before that morning, casting golden light across the crystal towers of the capital. The entire planet seemed to breathe in peace. For the first time in generations, humans and Tyrellians stood side by side, not as enemies, not as rivals, but as guests of the royal wedding that would unite two worlds. And at the heart of it all stood Luke Carter, dressed in simple but elegant Tyrell ceremonial armor, white trimmed with blue, the color of the royal crest. Across from him, Princess Alira shone like dawn itself. Her gown shimmered with threads of living light, each spark representing the bond of two souls who had endured war, fear, and fate itself. But even in that beauty, Luke felt nervous. He had faced battlefields, alien beasts, and the trial of honor, but nothing made his heart pound like seeing her walk toward him, her eyes full of love. When Alira reached him, she smiled softly. "You still look like you'd rather fight a monster than stand in front of a crowd," she teased. Luke laughed quietly. "Yeah, well, I'm just not used to people cheering for me instead of shooting at me." Alira giggled, the sound like soft chimes. "Then get used to it, my human. Today, you're our hero." The ceremony began beneath the crystal arch of unity, a sacred structure that glowed with both Tyrellian and human symbols. Thousands of guests watched in silence as the High Elder raised his staff. "Two hearts," the Elder said, "from two worlds, now stand as one. May their courage bring light where darkness once ruled." As the ritual continued, a beam of blue and white light wrapped around Luke and Alira's hands, binding them together. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a living energy that connected their life force for one eternal moment. Both could feel the warmth of each other's soul. Luke's pulse slowed, his mind calm, as if the universe itself whispered, "This is right." The king stepped forward then, his expression proud yet emotional. "Luke Carter," he said, "when I first saw you, I saw only a soldier. But now I see a man with a heart that carries the strength of two worlds. You have given us hope and given my daughter happiness. From this day, you are no longer an outsider. You are family." Luke bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I may not be one of your people by birth, but I'll protect this world as my own." The crowd erupted in applause, Tyrellians and humans cheering together for the first time in history. As the celebration continued, Alira pulled Luke aside, leading him to a balcony overlooking the city. Below them, fireworks painted the sky with colors that glimmered like stars. For a long time, neither spoke. They simply stood together, feeling the quiet peace of a future that once seemed impossible. Finally, Alira turned to him. "When you saved me, you changed everything," she whispered. "You ended a war, not with weapons, but with kindness." Luke smiled softly, brushing a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. "Maybe that's what humans are best at," he said. "We don't always know the right way, but we never stop trying." She placed her hand over his heart. "And that's why I love you." He took her hand gently. "And that's why I'll never leave you." Down below, the people sang together, two languages blending into one melody. The sound carried through the air like a promise of unity that would